The cold wind whipped across the open plain as Olivia Vance stared down the barrel of her Winchester rifle, her breath forming misty clouds in the crisp Montana dawn. The stagecoach robbery she'd just thwarted wasn't what she'd planned for her morning, but as the sole proprietor of the V-Bar Ranch outside Twin Falls, Montana Territory, in 1876, she'd learned that plans rarely survived contact with reality. "You shot like a man," muttered the driver as he secured the would-be robbers with rope. "Never seen a woman handle a gun like that." Olivia lowered her rifle, her hazel eyes narrowing at the backhanded compliment. "I shot like someone who knows how to shoot. Gender has nothing to do with it." She'd heard it all before. Too independent, too stubborn, too everything that a woman wasn't supposed to be. At 26, Olivia had spent the last 5 years running her father's ranch after his death, turning it into one of the most successful operations in the territory, much to the dismay of the men who believed a woman's place was in the home, not on horseback. The stagecoach carried on its way after the local sheriff, and his deputies arrived to collect the would-be robbers. Olivia mounted her Palomino, Sunfire, and headed back toward her ranch. The morning sun was casting long shadows across the rolling hills as she rode, her mind already mapping out the day's tasks. The cattle drive to Helena was coming up, and she needed to ensure everything was ready. As Olivia approached the main street of Twin Falls, she noticed the usual stares. Some were curious, some disapproving, but she'd grown accustomed to them. The general store was her first stop. She needed supplies for the upcoming drive. "Morning, Miss Vance," greeted Harold Simmons, the storekeeper. "Heard about your heroics with the stagecoach." "News travels fast," Olivia replied, handing him her list of supplies. "Always does. Mayor's mighty grateful his wife was on that coach." Harold began gathering her items. "Though I heard Wilbur Jenkins saying at the saloon last night that no man would ever marry a woman who can outshoot him." Olivia rolled her eyes. "Then it's fortunate I have no interest in marrying Wilbur Jenkins," Harold chuckled. "Fair enough. Oh, before I forget, there's a new fellow in town. Bought the old McAllister place yesterday. Wade Remington's his name. Comes from Texas, I hear." "Another rancher?" Olivia asked, trying not to sound too interested. "Seems so. Got a reputation as a fair cattleman. Served in the war, too." Olivia nodded, paying for her supplies and arranging for them to be delivered to her ranch. She had no time to concern herself with newcomers, regardless of their reputations. The V-Bar Ranch demanded her full attention, especially with 20 hired hands looking to her for direction. As she stepped out of the general store, the sound of hooves on packed dirt drew her attention. A man she didn't recognize rode past on a magnificent black stallion. He sat tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders clad in a dark blue shirt, a worn leather vest, and a dust-covered hat pulled low over his face. Something about his confident posture caught her attention before she shook herself free of the distraction and mounted Sunfire. The ride back to her ranch was peaceful, the Montana landscape sprawling before her in all its rugged beauty. The V-Bar Ranch came into view, a sprawling property with a large main house, several outbuildings, and corrals filled with some of the finest cattle and horses in the territory. It was her legacy and her life's work. Despite what the townspeople thought about a woman running such an operation, her foreman, Samuel Tucker, an older man who'd worked for her father for 20 years, greeted her as she dismounted. "Miss Olivia, we got trouble with the north pasture fence. Looks like someone cut it deliberately. Lost about 20 head before we noticed." Olivia's jaw tightened. Tracks, 3 riders, headed east toward the Carson property. Carson. She should have known. James Carson had been trying to pressure her to sell the V-Bar ever since her father died. He'd started with offers, then moved to veiled threats, and now it seemed he'd graduated to outright theft. "Get 6 men and ride out there. I want those cattle back," she ordered, her voice firm. "Yes, madam," Samuel hesitated. "The men are a bit uneasy about confronting Carson's boys directly." "Then I'll lead them myself." Samuel's weathered face creased with concern. "Miss Olivia, that might not be wise. Those are my cattle, Samuel. I won't let Carson or anyone else steal from me." Her tone left no room for argument. She was about to head to the house to change into riding clothes better suited for tracking when the sound of an approaching rider caught her attention. Turning, she was surprised to see the same black stallion and rider she'd noticed in town. The man pulled his horse to a stop and removed his hat, revealing a strong-jawed face with intelligent blue eyes and dark hair streaked with the faintest hints of silver at the temples. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with the weathered look of someone who spent most of his life outdoors. "Miss Vance," he called, his voice carrying a slight Texas drawl. "Yes," she replied, her hand instinctively moving closer to the revolver at her hip. He noticed the gesture and raised his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. "Wade Remington, madam. I believe I found something that belongs to you." He gestured behind him, and for the first time, Olivia noticed a small herd of cattle being driven by 2 riders, her cattle with the V-Bar brand clearly visible. "Mr. Remington," she said, surprised. "Those are indeed mine." "May I ask how you came to have them?" Wade dismounted, his movements fluid and practiced. Standing on the ground, she could see he was tall, over 6 feet, with the lean, muscular build of a working cattleman. "I was riding the boundaries of my new property when I spotted 3 men driving these cattle away from your land. When I inquired about their business, they seemed less than forthcoming." After a brief discussion, he paused, a slight smile playing at his lips. They decided the cattle would be better off returning to their rightful owner. "A brief discussion?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Let's just say they found my arguments persuasive." There was a glint in his eyes that suggested the discussion might have involved more than words. Olivia studied him for a moment. "That was a risk, Mr. Remington. Those men work for James Carson, and he's not known for his forgiving nature." Wade shrugged. "I've never been one to stand by while someone takes what isn't theirs, Miss Vance. Besides, I figured making friends with my closest neighbor might be a good way to start off in a new territory." Samuel was already directing the returning cattle into the corral. Olivia extended her hand to Wade in a businesslike manner. "Then consider us friends, Mr. Remington, and I'm in your debt." Wade took her hand, his grip firm but not overpowering. "No debt necessary, though I wouldn't say no to some local knowledge about the area if you're willing to share." "I think that can be arranged," Olivia replied, finding herself drawn to his straightforward manner. "Would you care to stay for dinner? It's the least I can offer in thanks." Wade smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. "I'd be honored, Miss Vance." "Olivia, please." "Olivia," he repeated, and something in the way he said her name made her pulse quicken slightly. "Then I insist you call me Wade." Dinner that evening was simple but hearty beef stew, freshly baked bread, and apple pie for dessert, prepared by Mrs. Abernathy, the ranch's cook. Olivia had changed into a more formal dress, though still practical by Eastern standards. She rarely entertained guests beyond her ranch hands, but there was something about Wade Remington that made her want to learn more about this newcomer. "So what brings you to Montana Territory, Wade?" she asked as they sat at the large oak dining table in her home. "Texas has plenty of cattle country." Wade took a sip of his coffee before answering. "I was looking for a fresh start. After the war, I went back to my family's ranch near San Antonio, but things had changed, or maybe I had." His eyes momentarily clouded with memories. When I heard about land opening up here, it seemed like a good opportunity. The McAllister place has good water rights and decent grazing, Olivia observed. Though the house needs work, Wade chuckled. That's putting it mildly. I'm sleeping in the barn until I can get the roof fixed. You're doing the repairs yourself, for now. Money's tied up in cattle and land. Hired hands will come later, once I'm established. He studied her across the table. I heard in town that you run this entire operation yourself. That's impressive. Olivia felt herself stiffen slightly, waiting for the inevitable criticism. Many would disagree with you. According to most people in Twin Falls, a woman has no business managing a ranch. Most people are fools, Wade replied simply. Results speak louder than opinions. Your cattle are healthy, your land is well maintained, and your reputation as a fair employer reaches all the way to Texas. I'd say that's what matters. His words caught her off guard. It had been so long since anyone had acknowledged her accomplishments without qualification. Thank you, she said quietly. It hasn't been easy. The worthwhile things rarely are. Wade's gaze was steady. My mother ran our ranch for 3 years while my father was fighting in the war, taught me that capability has nothing to do with whether you wear trousers or skirts. Their conversation flowed easily after that. Wade asked intelligent questions about the local markets, water resources, and grazing conditions. Olivia found herself enjoying his company more than she'd expected. He treated her as an equal, never talking down to her or dismissing her knowledge. As the evening drew to a close, Wade stood to leave. Thank you for your hospitality, Olivia, and for the valuable information. You're welcome to come back if you have more questions, she offered, surprising herself with the invitation. I'll take you up on that. He put on his hat. And if you ever need help with those discussions with Carson's men, I'd be happy to assist. Olivia walked him to the door. I can handle Carson. Wade smiled. I don't doubt that for a second, but even the most capable rancher needs allies. After he left, Olivia found herself standing on the porch longer than necessary, watching his silhouette disappear into the darkness. She couldn't remember the last time a man had treated her with such genuine respect. Most either condescended to her or resented her independence. Wade Remington seemed different, but experience had taught her caution. The following weeks brought the busy preparations for the cattle drive. Olivia had little time to think about her new neighbor, though she heard reports that he was making impressive progress on renovating the old McAllister place. Occasionally, their paths would cross in town, and they'd exchange brief, friendly conversations. One afternoon, as Olivia was checking supply inventories in the barn, Samuel approached with a troubled expression. Miss Olivia, just got word from town. Carson's been telling folks he's going to be the new owner of the V-Bar by summer's end. Olivia set down her ledger. That's nothing new. He's been saying that for years. This time's different. He's bragging about having powerful friends coming in on the next stage, some kind of Eastern investors with political connections. A chill ran down Olivia's spine. The territory was changing, with more Eastern money flowing in and new laws being established. If Carson had indeed found backers with political influence, he might find ways to challenge her water rights or access to grazing land. We proceed as planned with the cattle drive, she said firmly. I won't be intimidated by Carson's threats. But privately, she was concerned. The cattle drive to Helena was crucial. The profits would allow her to pay off the loan she'd taken last winter during the severe cold snap that had killed some of her herd. If anything interfered with the drive, she could lose everything her father had built. The day before the drive was set to begin, Olivia rode out to check the herd one last time. The cattle were gathered in the north pasture, ready for the journey that would begin at dawn. As she crested a hill, she spotted riders near her herd, 3 men she recognized as Carson's hired guns. Fury rose within her as she urged Sunfire forward. They scattered as she approached, but not before she saw what they were doing, deliberately spooking her cattle, trying to start a stampede that would scatter her drive herd across the territory. She managed to help her cowhands calm the cattle, but the message was clear. Carson was escalating his tactics. That evening, she called her ranch hands together. "Tomorrow's drive is critical," she told them. "Carson's men will likely try to interfere again. I'm asking for extra vigilance from all of you." "Maybe we should postpone, Miss Olivia," suggested one of the younger hands. "Wait until Carson calms down." "He won't calm down," she replied. "And we can't afford to wait. The buyer in Helena won't hold the contract if we're late." The men exchanged uneasy glances, but they nodded their agreement. Olivia knew they were loyal, but she also knew they were worried. Carson had a reputation for violence. As she was checking the last of the supplies, hoofbeats approached the ranch. She stepped out to see Wade Remington riding up, leading a pack horse laden with gear. "Evening, Olivia," he called, dismounting. "Wade, what brings you here?" He adjusted his hat. "Heard in town that you're starting your drive tomorrow. Also heard that Carson's making threats." Olivia crossed her arms. And I thought you might appreciate an extra hand. I've driven cattle from Texas to Kansas more times than I can count." "I have enough men," she said, though in truth she was short-handed. Wade gave her a knowing look. "Do you?" Because Carson was in the saloon earlier, offering double wages to any man who leaves your employ before the drive. Olivia felt her stomach sink. "He wouldn't dare." "He would, and he has. 2 of your men were considering his offer when I left town." She clenched her fists. If she lost any more hands, the drive would be nearly impossible. "Why would you help me? You barely know me." "I know enough," Wade said simply. "I know you're being targeted for having the audacity to be successful while female. I know Carson is a bully who thinks money and intimidation can get him whatever he wants. And I know that if he succeeds with you, I'm likely next on his list." Olivia studied him, weighing her options. She needed the help, but accepting it felt dangerously close to admitting she couldn't handle things herself, something she'd refused to do for 5 years. Wade seemed to read her thoughts. "Accepting help doesn't make you less capable, Olivia. It makes you smart." After a moment, she nodded. "All right, we can use another experienced hand. We leave at dawn." The cattle drive began in the gray light of early morning. To Olivia's relief, none of her men had taken Carson's offer, though she suspected Wade's presence might have influenced that decision. The Texas cattlemen had a quiet authority that the ranch hands respected immediately. The first 2 days of the drive went smoothly. They moved the herd steadily north, making good progress toward Helena. Wade rode flank most of the time, occasionally trading places with Olivia as she checked on the remuda of extra horses. On the 3rd night, as they made camp by a small creek, Olivia found herself sitting next to Wade by the fire after most of the men had turned in. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamond dust. "You run a tight operation," Wade commented, pouring her a cup of coffee. "Your men respect you. They should. I pay fair wages and I don't ask them to do anything I wouldn't do myself." Wade nodded. "That's good leadership. My father always said the measure of a boss is how they treat the people who work for them." He took a sip of his coffee. "You remind me a bit of him, actually. Same quiet determination." "Tell me about your family," Olivia said, surprising herself with her interest. Wade gazed into the fire. "My father passed during the war, not from fighting but from illness in a prison camp. My mother held things together until my brother and I returned, but her health was never the same after that. She died 2 years ago." His voice held old pain, well worn but still present. "My brother Martin runs the family ranch now. We had different ideas about the future. It seemed best if I found my own path." "I'm sorry about your parents," Olivia said softly. "My father was everything to me. When he died, everyone expected me to sell the ranch and move east to live with my aunt, maybe find a husband who'd take care of me." She couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "But you stayed. This land was his dream. He built it from nothing." She looked out into the darkness beyond their fire. "The first year was the hardest. The bank tried to foreclose, neighbors tried to buy the land for a fraction of its worth, and every man in the county seemed to think he knew better than me how to run my own ranch." Wade was quiet for a moment. "Yet here you are, driving your own herd to market." "Here I am," she agreed, finding comfort in his simple acknowledgement. They sat in companionable silence, the crackling fire and occasional lowing of cattle the only sounds. Olivia couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so at ease in someone's presence. "Carson won't give up easily," Wade finally said. "Men like him can't stand being bested, especially by a woman." "I'm aware," Olivia replied, "but neither will I." Wade smiled at that. "Your strength is remarkable, Olivia Vance. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Their eyes met across the fire, and Olivia felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the flames. She quickly looked away, unsettled by her reaction to him. "We should get some sleep," she said, rising. "Early start tomorrow." Wade nodded, but as she walked away, she could feel his gaze following her. The fourth day of the drive brought trouble. They were crossing a narrow pass when shots rang out from the rocky slopes above. The cattle immediately began to panic, the lead steers turning back against the flow of the herd. "Stampede!" someone shouted. Olivia spurred Sunfire forward, racing to the front of the herd to try to turn the leaders. Wade was already there, his black stallion moving with incredible agility among the frightened cattle. More shots echoed through the pass. Olivia caught glimpses of men on the ridgeline. Carson's men, deliberately causing chaos. "Head them off." She shouted to her cowhands who were struggling to contain the increasingly frantic herd. Wade appeared beside her, his expression grim. "We need to stop those shooters or we'll lose half the herd." Without hesitation, Olivia pulled her rifle from its scabbard. "Help the men with the cattle. I'll deal with Carson's thugs." Before Wade could protest, she was galloping Sunfire toward a narrow trail that led up the ridge. She heard him shout something after her, but the thunder of hooves and bellowing cattle drowned out his words. The trail was treacherous, barely wide enough for a horse in some places, but Olivia knew these lands intimately. She reached a ledge that gave her a clear view of the men causing the disturbance, 3 riders shooting into the air and whooping to frighten the cattle. Taking careful aim with her rifle, she fired a warning shot that kicked up dirt near the closest rider's horse. The man jerked in surprise, nearly falling from his saddle. "The next one won't miss," Olivia shouted. "Clear out now or I start shooting for real." The men spun toward her voice, and she recognized one as Harlan Doyle, Carson's foreman. He raised his rifle in her direction, but before he could fire, another shot rang out from below. Harlan's weapon flew from his hands. Wade had followed her up the trail and now sat on his stallion a few yards away, his smoking revolver pointed steadily at Harlan. "I wouldn't," Wade called out, his voice deadly calm. "Miss Vance might aim for your horse. I'll be aiming considerably higher." The 3 men exchanged glances, clearly weighing their options. "Carson won't be happy," Harlan finally said. "Carson isn't here," Olivia replied. And you're trespassing on public land while interfering with a lawful cattle drive. That's enough to get you jail time in Helena." After a tense moment, Harlan signaled to his companions. "This ain't over," he snarled before they turned their horses and rode away. Once they were gone, Wade holstered his revolver and turned to Olivia. "That was reckless." "It worked," she countered. "You could have been killed." "So could you, following me up here." They stared at each other, tension crackling between them until Wade unexpectedly laughed. "You are the most stubborn woman I've ever met, Olivia Vance." Despite herself, she smiled. "I believe the word you're looking for is determined." They rode back down to find that the cowhands had managed to contain the stampede, though they'd lost about 30 head over a steep embankment. It was a loss, but not a devastating one. That night, as they made camp, the mood was subdued. Everyone knew Carson's men might return, and the narrow escape had shaken some of the younger hands. Wade joined Olivia as she checked on a horse that had been injured during the chaos. "The men are worried," he said quietly. "I know." She straightened up from examining the horse's leg. "But we're more than halfway to Helena. We can't turn back now." "No one's suggesting that," Wade replied. "But it might be wise to send a rider ahead to Helena, let the sheriff know what's happening. Carson's men crossed a line today. They're no longer just making threats." Olivia nodded slowly. "You're right. I'll send Miguel at first light. He's our fastest rider." As they walked back toward the campfire, Wade suddenly stopped, placing a gentle hand on her arm. "Olivia, I want to say something, and I hope you won't take it the wrong way." She tensed, prepared for the kind of patronizing concern she'd heard too many times before. "What happened today, the way you rode up that ridge without hesitation, it was brave. Foolhardy, perhaps, but brave." His blue eyes were serious in the fading light. "Your strength is what I admire most about you. Most people, men included, would have given up long ago under the pressure Carson's putting on you." Olivia was momentarily speechless. In all her years running the ranch, no one had ever described her determination as admirable. Stubborn, yes. Unladylike, certainly, but never admirable. "Thank you," she finally said, her voice softer than intended. "That means a great deal coming from you." They stood close, the sounds of the camp seeming to fade away. For a brief moment, Olivia thought he might kiss her and was startled to realize she wanted him to. Instead, Wade took a respectful step back. "We should join the others," he said. "Early start tomorrow." Olivia nodded, trying to ignore the flutter of disappointment in her chest. The remainder of the drive was blessedly uneventful. Miguel returned from Helena with news that the sheriff would meet them at the outskirts of town, providing an escort for the final leg of their journey. True to his word, Sheriff Tanner and 3 deputies were waiting when they approached Helena. "Miss Vance," the sheriff greeted her. "Got your man's message. Carson's been pushing his luck for too long. I've sent telegrams to Twin Falls about this incident." "Thank you, Sheriff," Olivia replied, genuinely grateful for his support. With the sheriff's escort, they reached the stockyards without further incident. The buyer, Mr. Hollister, was impressed with the condition of the cattle despite the difficult journey. "Fine herd, Miss Vance," he commented as they completed the transaction. "Same quality as your father used to bring." Olivia felt a surge of pride at his words. "Thank you, Mr. Hollister. We'll see you again next season." With the cattle sold and the men paid, Olivia found herself with a decision to make. The original plan had been to spend 2 days in Helena before heading back to the ranch, giving the men some time to enjoy the town and the horses a chance to rest. "We could start back tomorrow," Wade suggested as they stabled their horses. "Get you back to your ranch sooner." "No," Olivia decided. "The men earned their time in town. We'll stick to the original plan." That evening, most of the hands headed for the saloons and other entertainments Helena offered. Olivia took a room at the Montana Hotel, looking forward to sleeping in a real bed after days on the trail. She had just finished a long, luxurious bath when there was a knock at her door. Wrapping herself in a robe, she called out, "Who is it?" "It's Wade. I have information you should hear." Quickly dressing in a simple skirt and blouse, Olivia opened the door to find Wade looking unusually serious. "What is it?" she asked, gesturing for him to enter. "I ran into an old Army friend at the telegraph office. He works for the territorial government now." Wade removed his hat as he stepped inside. "Carson's in Helena, meeting with land commissioners tomorrow. He's trying to challenge your water rights." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. Water rights were everything in Montana. Without access to the creek that ran through her property, the V-bar would be worthless. "On what grounds?" she demanded. "He's claiming your father's original filing was improperly recorded. It's a technicality, but with enough money and influence, technicalities can become problems." Olivia sank into a chair, her mind racing. "My father's paperwork was in perfect order. I've seen it myself." "When was the last time you checked the records office?" she frowned. "Not since he died." "Why would I?" Wade sat across from her. "Because documents can go missing when enough money changes hands. Carson may have bribed someone to lose the original filing. That's illegal." "It's also hard to prove." Wade leaned forward. "The good news is my friend says the commissioners are meeting at the territorial offices tomorrow morning. If you have copies of the original water rights, you might be able to counter Carson's claim." Olivia felt sick. "I have copies at the ranch, but they are of no use to me here." "What about your lawyer? Would he have copies?" "Mr. Fredericks in Twin Falls has some of my father's papers, but I don't know if the water rights are among them." She stood and began to pace. "Even if they are, there's no way to get word to him and receive the documents by tomorrow morning." Wade watched her for a moment. "There might be another way. Tell me, how well did you know Judge Harmon before he retired?" "Judge Harmon? He was a friend of my father's. Used to come to dinner at the ranch occasionally." "Why?" "He lives here in Helena now. My friend mentioned he's been appointed as a special advisor to the Land Commission." Wade smiled. "A personal appeal might buy you some time." Hope flickered in Olivia's chest. "Do you know where he lives?" "Better than that, I know he dines at the Helena Club every evening at 7. "Which gives you," he checked his pocket watch, "about 30 minutes to change into something suitable for the finest establishment in Helena." Olivia had packed one good dress for the trip, a deep green silk that she rarely had occasion to wear at the ranch. She changed quickly while Wade waited in the hotel lobby. Together, they made their way to the Helena Club, an imposing building that catered to the territory's elite. Wade stopped at the entrance. "This is as far as I go. The Helena Club doesn't admit cowboys, only gentlemen." The way he emphasized the word made it clear what he thought of such distinctions. "What about me?" Olivia asked. "Will they admit a woman?" "Only as the guest of a member." "But Judge Harmon's a progressive sort. When the doorman tells him you're here, I wager he'll come out." Olivia touched Wade's arm. "Thank you for this." He smiled, his eyes warm. "Go save your ranch, Olivia." Judge Harmon indeed remembered her, and not only invited her into the club, but insisted she join him for dinner. The elderly judge was clearly delighted to see his old friend's daughter. "Your father would be proud of what you've accomplished, Olivia," he said as they dined. Not many could have kept that ranch going under such pressure. When she explained Carson's scheme, the judge's bushy eyebrows drew together in a thunderous frown. Disgraceful tactics. Unfortunately, not uncommon these days. He considered for a moment. Without the original documents or certified copies, it will be difficult to dismiss Carson's petition outright. Then I've already lost, Olivia said, her heart sinking. I didn't say that. Judge Harmon leaned forward. I still have some influence. I can convince the commissioners to delay their decision for 30 days, giving you time to produce the necessary documentation. Relief flooded through her. Judge Harmon, I don't know how to thank you. No thanks necessary, my dear. Your father was a good man who believed in playing by the rules. Men like Carson want to twist those rules to their advantage. He patted her hand. Besides, I've always believed a person should be judged by their character and capabilities, not their gender. The next morning, Judge Harmon was true to his word. When Carson presented his petition to the Land Commission, the judge raised numerous procedural questions that resulted in a 30-day continuance. Carson was furious, especially when he spotted Olivia observing from the back of the meeting room. "This isn't over, Vance," he snarled as he pushed past her. "No, it isn't," she agreed calmly. "But when it is, you'll find I don't surrender what's rightfully mine." The return journey to Twin Falls was uneventful, though Olivia's mind was preoccupied with the looming battle over her water rights. Wade rode beside her most of the way, his steady presence a comfort she hadn't realized she needed. As they approached the outskirts of Twin Falls, Olivia found herself reluctant for the journey to end. Wade had proven himself not just a capable cattleman, but a true friend, perhaps the first real friend she'd had since taking over the ranch. "I've been thinking," Wade said as they rode side by side, the rest of the men strung out behind them. "Carson's not going to stop at challenging your water rights. Men like him don't know when to quit." "I'm aware," Olivia replied, "but what choice do I have? I can't sell the V-bar." "It's all I have." Wade was quiet for a moment. "You have more than you realize, Olivia. You have respect from your men, from people like Judge Harmon, from me." She glanced at him, surprised by the earnestness in his voice. "What I'm trying to say," he continued, "is that you don't have to fight alone. Alliances make us stronger, not weaker." "Are you proposing some kind of business arrangement?" she asked. Wade's laugh was soft. "Not exactly, though I wouldn't rule it out for the future." He met her gaze directly. "Right now, I'm proposing friendship. A public alliance between our ranches would make Carson think twice about targeting either of us." Olivia considered his words. "That makes practical sense." "It does," Wade agreed, "though I'll admit my motives aren't entirely practical." There was something in his eyes that made her heart beat faster. "I admire you, Olivia Vance. Your courage, your determination, your unwillingness to bend to others' expectations. I'd like the chance to know you better if you're willing." For once, Olivia found herself speechless. She'd grown so accustomed to defending her independence that she'd built walls around herself without realizing it. The idea of letting someone in, especially a man, was both terrifying and strangely appealing. "I would like that too," she finally admitted, "but I won't change who I am." "I would never ask you to," Wade replied simply. "Your strength is what I admire most about you." They rode in companionable silence for a while, the implications of their conversation settling between them like a delicate new understanding. When they reached Twin Falls, they parted ways, Wade heading for his own ranch while Olivia returned to the V-bar. But before they separated, he made her promise to join him for dinner the following evening. True to her word, Olivia rode to the old McAllister place, now the Remington ranch, the next day. She was impressed by the changes Wade had already made. The house was nearly restored, the barn freshly painted, and new corrals had been constructed for his growing herd. Wade greeted her warmly, taking her on a tour of the improvements before serving a surprisingly well-prepared dinner. "You cook?" she asked, impressed by the tender roast beef and perfectly seasoned vegetables. My mother insisted all her children learn. Said no one should be dependent on others for basic needs. He smiled at the memory. She was a lot like you believed capability had nothing to do with conventional roles. Their conversation ranged widely, from practical ranching matters to books they'd read to memories of their childhoods. By the time evening shadows lengthened, Olivia realized she'd never felt so comfortable with anyone. As Wade walked her to her horse, he hesitated, then took her hand gently in his. "I'd like to call on you properly, Olivia, if that's something you'd welcome." The simple, direct request touched her. No pretense, no games, just honest expression of interest. "I would welcome that, Wade," she replied softly. He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners, then leaned forward slowly, giving her plenty of time to step away if she wished. Instead, she found herself moving closer, and when his lips met hers in a gentle kiss, it felt both surprising and inevitable. The kiss was brief, but left her feeling strangely breathless. Wade stepped back respectfully, but his eyes held a promise that made her cheeks warm. "Good night, Olivia," he said, helping her mount Sunfire. "Good night, Wade," she replied, finding herself reluctant to leave. Over the next few weeks, a pattern emerged. Wade would ride to the V-Bar some evenings, or Olivia would visit his ranch. They worked separately during the days, each managing their own affairs, but increasingly found reasons to consult one another on business matters. Word spread quickly through Twin Falls that the territory's most independent woman rancher was being courted by the newcomer from Texas. Opinions were divided. Some approved, believing Olivia would finally settle down, while others wagered Wade would soon tire of a woman who insisted on making her own decisions. Meanwhile, Carson hadn't given up his schemes. His challenge to Olivia's water rights remained pending, and there were rumors he was trying to pressure the bank to call in her loans early. One afternoon, as Olivia was reviewing her accounts in the ranch office, Samuel knocked on the door. "Miss Olivia, there's a man here from the bank. Says he needs to speak with you urgently." Her stomach tightened with apprehension, but she kept her expression neutral. "Send him in." The bank representative, Mr. Patterson, looked uncomfortable as he entered, clutching his hat in his hands. "Miss Vance, I'm afraid I have some difficult news. The bank is requiring immediate payment of your outstanding loan." "That's impossible," Olivia replied calmly, though her heart was racing. "The terms clearly state the loan is due next spring." "There's a clause allowing the bank to demand early payment under certain circumstances," Patterson explained, not meeting her eyes. "What circumstances?" she demanded. "The bank has concerns about the stability of your operation given the pending water rights dispute." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "Carson got to you, didn't he? How much did he pay the bank president?" Patterson flushed. "Miss Vance, that's a serious accusation. It's the truth, and we both know it." She stood, her voice steady despite her anger. "You can tell Mr. Whitaker that I'll be consulting my attorney about this clear breach of contract. I suspect Judge Harmon would also be interested to hear about the bank's questionable business practices." The mention of Judge Harmon caused Patterson to pale visibly. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. I'll speak with Mr. Whitaker again." "You do that," Olivia replied coldly. "Good day, Mr. Patterson." After he left, she sank back into her chair, the facade of confidence crumbling. The loan amount was substantial money she'd borrowed to improve her breeding stock. While the cattle drive proceeds would cover some of it, paying the entire sum immediately would leave her cash reserves dangerously low. She was still considering her options when Wade arrived for their planned dinner. One look at her face told him something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, concerned. When she explained, his expression darkened. Carson's getting desperate. Using the bank this way crosses a line. It's just another tactic, Olivia said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. I'll find a way to handle it. Wade paced the office for a moment, then turned to her with determination. I have a suggestion, but I want you to hear me out completely before you respond. Warily, she nodded. I have money set aside, money I was planning to use for expanding my herd next spring. I can lend it to you to pay off the bank. You would owe me instead of them, with the same terms you originally agreed to. Olivia stared at him. Wade, he held up a hand. I'm not finished. This would be a strictly business arrangement. A formal loan with proper documentation, interest, everything legal and above board. No strings attached, no expectations beyond repayment on the agreed schedule. She studied him, looking for any hint of ulterior motive, but found only sincere concern. Still, years of fierce independence made her hesitate. I can't ask you to risk your capital on my behalf. You're not asking, I'm offering. Wade's eyes held hers steadily. And it's not a risk. I've seen your operation, your books. You're a sound investment, Olivia. People will talk, she warned. They'll say I couldn't manage on my own, that I needed a man to rescue me. Let them talk, Wade replied. We know the truth. This isn't about rescuing, it's about alliance. Today I help you, tomorrow you might help me. That's how neighbors should behave. Olivia took a deep breath. I'll consider it, she finally said, but I need to explore other options first. Wade nodded, respecting her decision. That's fair. The offer stands whenever you need it. They managed to enjoy their dinner despite the shadow of Carson's latest move hanging over them. Wade, seeming to sense her need for distraction, entertained her with stories of cattle drives gone wrong in Texas, and the characters he'd met along the way. Later that evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Wade took her hand. Whatever you decide about the loan, I want you to know something. What's that? She asked, turning to look at him. I'm falling in love with you, Olivia Vance. His voice was quiet but certain, not despite your independence but because of it. Because you fight for what's yours, because you refuse to be anything less than who you truly are. The simple declaration stole her breath. She'd been called many things in her life: stubborn, difficult, unladylike, but never had someone named her strength as the reason for loving her. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Wade smiled. You don't need to say anything. I just wanted you to know where I stand. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. Take all the time you need with the loan decision and with us. I'm not going anywhere. The next morning, Olivia rode into town with renewed determination. Her first stop was the telegraph office, where she sent messages to her cattle buyers in Helena and Butte, asking for advances on future deliveries. Next, she visited Mr. Fredericks, her attorney, who confirmed that the bank's actions were legally questionable. They're on shaky ground, Miss Vance, he assured her. I can file an injunction that would at least buy you some time. Do it, she instructed. And while you're at it, check that all my water rights documentation is in order for the hearing in Helena. Her final stop was the bank itself, where she requested a meeting with Mr. Whitaker, the president. The balding man received her coolly in his office. Miss Vance, I understand you're upset about our decision, but I assure you it's purely business. Is it? Olivia countered. Because it seems remarkably convenient that your demand for early payment comes right as James Carson is challenging my water rights. Whitaker's expression hardened. The bank must protect its investments. Without clear water rights, your property value is compromised. My water rights are perfectly clear and legally recorded. The only compromise is coming from Carson's underhanded tactics. She leaned forward. Mr. Whitaker, I've been banking here since my father opened his first account 30 years ago. I've never missed a payment. My ranch is profitable and well managed. You really want it known throughout the territory that Twin Falls Bank abandons loyal customers at the first sign of pressure from wealthy interests. The banker shifted uncomfortably. What exactly are you suggesting, Miss Vance? I'm suggesting you reconsider this hasty demand. My attorney believes it violates our contract terms and is preparing an injunction. She paused for effect. Of course, if the bank were to withdraw its demand, I would see no need for legal action. Whitaker studied her for a long moment. I'll need to consult with the board. You have until tomorrow, Olivia replied, rising from her chair. After that, Mr. Fredericks files his papers and I begin moving my considerable business to the bank in Helena. She walked out with her head high, though inside she was trembling. The confrontation had been necessary, but she had no guarantee it would work. If the bank stood firm, she would either need to accept Wade's offer or risk losing everything. The next day brought a letter from the bank, formally withdrawing the demand for early payment and reaffirming the original loan terms. Olivia couldn't help but smile as she read it. Her gamble had paid off. Still, she knew this was just one battle in an ongoing war with Carson. When Wade visited that evening and heard the news, his face lit up with genuine pleasure. "That's wonderful, Olivia. I knew you'd find a way." His unselfish delight in her success touched her deeply. Most men, she suspected, would have been disappointed that their assistance wasn't needed. Wade seemed truly happy that she'd resolved the situation independently. "I still appreciate your offer," she told him as they walked along the creek that ran through her property. "It meant a great deal to know you were willing to help." "The offer stands," he replied easily. "For this or any future need, that's what friends do for each other." She caught the slight hesitation before the word friends and stopped walking to face him. "Is that what we are, Wade, friends?" His blue eyes searched hers. "I hope we're becoming more than that. But I'm content to let you set the pace." The sun was setting behind him, gilding his features and casting long shadows across the grass. In that moment, with the day's victory still fresh and the beauty of her land spread around them, Olivia allowed herself to acknowledge what she'd been feeling for weeks. "I'm falling in love with you too," she said softly. "And it terrifies me." Wade's expression softened. "Why does it frighten you?" "Because I've built my life around not needing anyone, around proving I could succeed on my own." She gestured to the ranch around them. "What if loving you means losing that independence I've fought so hard for?" Wade stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Olivia, loving someone doesn't mean surrendering who you are. It means having someone who values that person, all of that person, even the parts the rest of the world misunderstands." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I don't want to change you. I want to stand beside you, face whatever comes together, celebrate your victories as if they were my own." "And my ranch, my business," she asked, needing to be certain. "Remains yours," he answered without hesitation. "Though I hope someday you might see value in combining our operations as equals. Two ranches, stronger together than apart." The sincerity in his eyes convinced her more than his words. This wasn't a man who would try to control her or diminish her accomplishments. This was a man who saw her strength and admired it. When he kissed her this time, she responded with all the emotion she'd kept carefully contained for so long. It was a kiss of equals, of mutual respect and growing love. The following weeks brought the confrontation with Carson to a head. The hearing about the water rights was scheduled in Helena, and both Olivia and Wade traveled there together. Judge Harmon had helped ensure the proceedings would be fair, and with her documentation in perfect order, Olivia prevailed. Carson's challenge was dismissed. his duplicity in attempting to manipulate records exposed. On the journey back to Twin Falls, Wade proposed. Not in the traditional way of a man asking to take care of a woman, but as one rancher to another, one independent spirit recognizing its match. "Marry me, Olivia," he said as they camped under the stars. "Not because either of us needs the other to survive, but because life is richer when shared with someone who understands your dreams." Olivia considered his words carefully. "If I say yes, I need you to understand that I won't stop being who I am. I'll still make my own decisions, run my ranch my way." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Wade replied. "Your strength is what I admired from the first, what I continue to admire every day. I don't want a wife who disappears into my shadow. I want a partner who walks beside me, her own person, making her own mark on the world." His answer settled the last of her doubts. "Then yes, Wade Remington, I will marry you." Their wedding that autumn was a simple affair held on the V-Bar Ranch. Many in Twin Falls were surprised by the match, having assumed Olivia would never marry. Some predicted Wade would soon tame his independent bride, but those who knew them better understood the truth. Theirs was a partnership of equals, built on mutual respect and admiration. In the years that followed, their ranches prospered. They maintained separate operations in many ways, with Olivia continuing to manage the V-Bar and Wade the Remington Ranch. But they increasingly made strategic decisions together, eventually combining their herds for drives and their resources for major improvements. Their first child, a son they named Thomas after Olivia's father, was born a year after their marriage. He was joined 2 years later by a daughter, Elizabeth, who showed her mother's determination from her first steps. Both children grew up understanding that capability had nothing to do with gender. Their mother's example made that lesson clear. Carson eventually overreached in his dealings and lost most of his holdings to Eastern investors. He left the territory in disgrace, his attempts to drive Olivia out ultimately strengthening her position instead. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Wade and Olivia sat on the porch of the V-Bar main house, watching the sunset just as they had the night he first told her he loved her. "Any regrets?" he asked, his arm around her shoulders. Olivia shook her head. "Not one, though I'm still waiting for you to try to tell me how to run my ranch." She smiled to show she was teasing. Wade laughed. "I value my life too much for that." He grew more serious. "You know, when I first came to Montana, I was just looking for land and a fresh start. I never expected to find someone like you." "Someone too stubborn for her own good," Olivia suggested. "Someone strong enough to stand her ground when the whole world was telling her to step aside." He kissed her temple gently. "The finest rancher in the territory, who just happens to be the woman I love." As darkness fell over the Montana landscape they both cherished, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She had fought to preserve her independence, never realizing that the right partnership would enhance rather than diminish it. Wade had given her the rarest gift of all, loving her not despite her strength, but because of it, seeing as admirable what others had condemned. Together, they had built something neither could have created alone, a legacy of respect, equality, and love that would endure long after they were gone, as sturdy and lasting as the mountains that framed their home.